Let's get started. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August Virtual Tech Talk hosted by the Greater Houston section of the American Chemical Society. For those who don't know me, my name is Dawn Friesen. I'm the Programming Chair and 2020 Chair-elect of the Houston section. This is our first midday seminar in quite some time, and certainly several years as far as I'm aware. So I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to join us today. Before I introduce the speaker, just a reminder to everyone, everyone's already doing it, but please make sure your microphones are on mute during the presentation. Questions for the speaker can be typed into the chat window on your Zoom app, and we will pull them out and make sure they are asked during the question period after the seminar. Would also like to notify everyone that this meeting is being recorded, and we will be uploading this to the ACS Greater Houston section YouTube channel following this talk. You'll also be able to find that link from our website, which is acs-ghs.wildapricot.org. And with that said, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Brian Rivera. Brian is the co-creator of the Flow System, founder and CEO of AGLX Consulting. He's a former US Navy F-14 instructor and demonstration team member and a current captain in the US Navy Reserve. Excuse me, he has worked with the co-creator of the Scrum framework and the co-creator of Lean Kanban University and led several high-profile digital transformations. He often speaks at global Agile, Scrum and Performance conferences on the topics of high reliability, leadership, teamwork, and complex adaptive systems. He's also given a number of talks over the past 6 months, including Design for Flow at TEDx Budapest, and we're very pleased to have him with us here today. So Brian, I'll pass it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Don, and welcome everybody. I'm here in Virginia Beach, Virginia. My name is Brian Ponch Rivera. Some people call me that because of my call sign back in the Navy. But what I like to do today is make sure that we have some basic technical competence in what we're going to do. So everybody should have the chat window up, and I would like you to go ahead and just type in hi right now while I'm bringing up a picture. So as I get set up here so I can see that chat window, I like this picture because it means so much to many people, or it means different things to different people. Specifically, that just because you have a great level of technical competence doesn't mean we're great at becoming a high-performing team. So we're going to look at that a little bit today. I usually get a big laugh out of this when I show this picture, but that's not a person, by the way, so don't be nervous about that. That's actually a dummy. So a little bit about me. You heard Don give you a little background there. Got out of the military about 8 years ago. Found myself in this Agile Scrum world, if you will. And what really kind of feel like the Forrest Gump of Agile. In fact, I know where all the dead bodies are, if you will, inside the Agile community because I've been around so many different organizations. I got to work with the creator of Scrum, Jeff Sutherland, whose book, this one right here, doing The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, is very popular. I worked with him for a couple of years at Toyota, and we worked on something known as Scrum at Scale. I started my company years after that, or a few years after that. I've worked at Amazon. I've worked at a bunch of financial services companies. I got to coach NFL football teams, which is kind of cool, on the same things that we're going to talk about today. But big picture, I'm a knuckle dragger. Degree in economics, undergrad there, a little bit of engineering. And then I did get an MBA, and I spent some time with the Navy in different schools for planning, leadership, and operation science. So other than that, not a big brain, just a guy that kind of is trying to connect some dots, and hopefully I can do that for you. So with that being said, I see that everybody's been able to respond in chat. We're going to need that capability here in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of work from an iPad today. So hopefully we can enjoy that. So bringing up the iPad right now. There we go. Okay, so background in high reliability organizations, aircraft carriers on the left. I am the co-creator of what is known as the Flow System. So for those of you who understand or are familiar with the concept of flow from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, I got to go to Budapest a few months ago, right before COVID, and do a talk on the Design for Flow, which is using a little bit of his work and using a little bit of work of Adrian Bejan's work in the constructal law. So I think many of you have a science background, chemistry background. But there is a law of physics that says all systems or all moving systems are flow systems, which is a good thing. Nothing wrong with that. That's a big picture of the flow system. There's no way in heck today I'm going to be able to go through all this with you, but there are 3 pillars in it that we may touch on: the complexity thinking, the team science, a little bit of distributed leadership, and of course the Toyota production system there at the bottom, the Toyota way, as well as focus on customer delivery. You can find the guide online. It's easy, it's free. I gave you the link before, but the flow system guide is online. I think it's in 13 languages right now, and the book will be out soon. So just some more background on this. When I was coaching with Jeff Sutherland, doing a lot of work there with Scrum, coaching different industries, I was the outsider. I was the guy coming in from a background where teamwork was actually trained. It's part of what we do. And what I recognized and realized was that today's agile movement is not focusing on teamwork, they're focusing on the frameworks. And in my opinion, that's backwards. So hopefully we'll make some sense of that as we go forward. So I got together with Nigel, who was an executive at Toyota. I worked with him for a couple of years while at Toyota, and we accidentally came across Professor John Turner, who studied complex adaptive systems and team science. And we were able to connect all these dots, put them together, and off we go. So we'll touch on a few things as we go, but mainly I want to get you guys excited about what Agile is, give you some background on it, and connect it to some of the sciences that you may know already. And hopefully that'll open up the way you look at Agile, Iterative, Scrum, however you want to look at these things, and make that connection that this is not anything new. So I'm going to start off with Deepwater Horizon. Having a background in oil and gas, I think some folks in here may remember this about 10 or 11 years ago. Horrible accident, Macondo well. And what happens is when you look at the causal factors behind it, it's not mechanical. It's always about the system. And some of the causal factors behind this failure were leadership, a failure of not having a bias toward action, poor decision-making, weak communication, and a lack of situational awareness, amongst a bunch of other things. So that really changed the oil and gas industry quite a bit. In fact, they said, hey, you know what? We need to look at human factors. We need to understand what military aviators have done. And there was a big push about 5 or 7 years ago to bring in what is known as crew resource management, which is what I went through. And it's really charm school for adults. It teaches you how to communicate. It teaches you how to plan. It teaches you teamwork. And the reason behind that is our technical competence, no matter how great it is doesn't come into play when it comes to teamwork. So teaming skills must be learned, practiced, reinforced. We learn that there, and it transfers to any industry. Now, just a few years ago, we had a few accidents in the Navy, the USS Fitzgerald and USS McCain. I was actually coaching at Schlumberger, not too far from you guys in Houston. For those of you who are in Houston, I was coaching down there, and I picked up the phone and I talked to Jeff Sutherland, whom I was working for, and I said, hey, I just got a phone call from the Navy. The Navy said, we need you back in here with my background in consulting, agility, innovation, and we want you to come back in the Navy and do something for us. And that something was to go interview any organization that I wanted to, go meet with any academic that I wanted to, and figure out how to build a high-performing team, high-performing culture, how to build better leaders, how to get leading indicators, and of course, how to build a more safe Navy. And that's exactly what I did. So I worked for the Navy for about 6 to 8 months, developing a plan around that. And when you looked at the factors behind those accidents at sea, they look very much the same as what we saw in Macondo well. So we're starting to see patterns here. Now, I'm going to ask you to type in the answer to the following question, and I think I just gave it away, but I want to know what you believe the third leading cause of death in the United States is right now. So if you put that in the chat window, that'd be great. What is the third leading cause of death? I'll go ahead and chat it in there, if you don't mind. Okay, we got cancer. Nobody's put COVID in there yet. So we'll go with that right now. Cancer is, I think, the first or second, or number one or number two. Accidents could be one of them. But the third leading cause of death, according to researchers in the healthcare industry, is actually what they call human error or human factors. And when you boil it down, it really gets boiled down to teamwork. Poor teamwork kills people in a hospital. And there's also something known as a sentinel event. A sentinel event is them operating on the wrong arm, operating on the wrong person, creating more harm to the individual than what they had when they came in. So what doctors did is they realized that they have this great technical competence, but they lack the teaming skills. So they, again, reached out to what oil and gas reached out to, which was aviation, and said, how do you guys really work together as teams? So they are applying this right now to learn how to work together as teams. It's working quite well, but unfortunately, today's Fortune 50, 100, 200 organizations are just starting to come around to this. So when you look at the big picture, what do all these organizations have in common? Well, they're very self-similar. You have people working in teams with some type of technology. And at the end of the day, when you look at the research out there, it shows that the number one thing that gives organizations a competitive advantage are non-technical soft skills or teaming or teamwork skills. And there's some good data coming out of Microsoft, Google, IBM, Gallup, just anywhere you look right now, the good research says, hey, look, we need these teaming skills, these social skills. Now, I want to demonstrate something to you we're going to use a quick chat feature here. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm sorry, I got tripped up there with the question. Are you familiar with the 5 dysfunctions of a team? And the answer is yes. Very familiar with it. They studied a lot of the same things that we studied. Unfortunately, it tells you what's wrong with teams, but it doesn't really tell you how to fix them for the most part. Now, I can't remember what those 5 dysfunctions are, but they are, I think it's, is his name Linconi, if I'm saying that right, did that work on that. So very familiar with it. Okay, everybody get your chat window ready. I'm going to demonstrate something to you here in a second. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to need you to type in an answer. And this is going to demonstrate, hopefully it'll demonstrate something about what we see. All right, so I took a picture of my bathroom this week, and it's just a typical bathroom. It's a little messy. I'm going to show you that picture here in a second. So you'll see things in there that you normally see in a bathroom, in any bathroom. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to look for something, and I'll tell you what that here is in a moment. And I want you to answer the question. And the question is, what color is it? So I'm going to show you the picture, and I want you to look at it, and I want you to type in the chat window what color is the toothbrush. So everybody type in what they see as the toothbrush, the color of the toothbrush. And I'm going to take that picture away from you now. All right. And for those of you who have their chat window up, we're getting different answers in there. All right. What's up? Okay. So Carrie knows the answer. She can't say that. So if you look at your chat window right now, you're going to see white and green, purple, dark blue, white and green, green and white. What this is really about is I gave you a frame, I gave you some context, and some of you looked right at the context and went to identify the white and green toothbrush. Some of you saw the big dark blue one or dark purple one in the background, which is very, very large. It's kind of out of context. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is even though we're subject matter experts at maybe going to the restroom and using the facilities and brushing our teeth, we may miss things that are right in front of us. In fact, the correct answer is there's two toothbrushes in here. There's a green and white one, a normal sized one, and of course the one in the background, which is purple or blue or black or whatever color you think it is. I really don't know the color of it. Okay, So this concept is known as inattentional blindness. We do not see what we do not expect to see. The context says you're going to look for a smaller toothbrush relative to the deodorant and relative to the cans there. You're not looking for the gigantic toothbrush in here. So even though we're subject matter experts in something, we're going to miss what's right in front of us. Now, if everybody in this chat window were a team, I would ask them to tell me how would it feel if you stood up and said, I saw a purple one, and then 70% of your teammates said that wasn't there. You probably wouldn't speak up. So I want to pause there. I'm going to come off the screen, and I want to check in with some folks and have a quick discussion about this before we go any further. All right, so the idea again is from a perspective, we all see things differently, even though we may be subject matter experts. And in the context of teamwork, the reason we want teams is we have different backgrounds, different perspectives. We have cognitive diversity in a group. So when you look at research papers and research in general, from what I understand about research is the best research is done by small teams. It's not done by individuals. Would you agree with that? Okay. And again, it's hard to get the feedback from here, but you can go ahead and throw it in a chat feature if you agree or disagree. All right. So I'm going to slow down there. I want to kind of check in with you to kind of get a temperature, get some feedback on, is this going to be helpful for you, or can I adjust as we go? And anybody could speak up or just throw it in the chat window if you're allowed to speak up.
People want to unmute themselves to have a bit of a discussion, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is David Leach. So specifically, what are you asking? What would be most helpful? Or
I'm just making sure that, do you have any comments, questions, concerns, or oh, by the ways about what you just saw? Is this making sense before we build into the next section here? Which you don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, I think it's making sense. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to...
I can say something here. So I like what you said, that we don't pay attention to things we don't see, because in the picture when you show it, I'll be honest with you, I did not see the purple toothbrush at all. Okay, it was such a huge thing that I didn't even notice it. You know, it was such a huge in the back, but only noticed a tiny bitty toothbrush right there in front of it. So I agree that we all miss out on things, you know, time to time, you know, in our personal, professional life, we do that. And I would like to see how we can overcome with that in the next slide that you're going to talk about. Thank you.
Absolutely. So you brought up...
Can I ask? Okay. So the other day when Ponch did this, he took the picture off the screen, and then when I said, he asked the color, and I said purple, he just said, you're wrong. And it really, to his point, that when that happens to you in a group setting with research, you just kind of shut up and not say anything. That was a visual, so I just laughed because I remember vividly seeing it. But if it's a point you're trying to make in research, it's easy, you're embarrassed, and you may just clam up and not move your idea forward. And I think that was the point he was trying to make. So I thought, when he pointed that out, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really how it is in a team setting, where someone kind of shames you into being quiet even though you see something.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch over to another slide here real fast because I think it's important. I want to actually emphasize a little bit more, so I'm switching over to another deck. So here it comes. This might be a little bit more nerve-wracking. Hopefully it works. Perfect. So now my iPad doesn't want to work. Don't worry, I've got a backup plan. Okay, so I'll just tell you about it, and then I'll come back to the deck that we have. So inattentional blindness, there's a study done, I believe it was in 2013. It's in psychological science. Drew and Wolf are the researchers. Basically, they looked at inattentional blindness, and they gave 24 radiologists were asked to perform a nodule detection test, something that they do every day. But what they did is they put a picture of a gorilla in there, which was 48 times the size of a nodule. 83% of the radiologists did not see the gorilla, even though they had eye tracking software tracking it, their eyes looked right at it. 83% did not see it. 17% did see it, but they felt a little nervous that they were the minority and saw it. So again, this is about subject matter experts who are working in their domain can miss things that are right in front of them. And, it's a human factor, a human limitation, or a basic reality of being human that we need to overcome when we work together as a team. So hopefully I can get back to my iPad. If not, I got to jump back onto my Mac to share out the rest of this. And we're going to go to Mac. So we're going to lose some capability here. I apologize. It's technology, right? We'll get back to the deck, and unfortunately, I won't be able to draw on it.
Most days you can't seem to win with technology.
Yeah, it's always something. I just swapped decks over here on my iPad. That's what I was sharing with you, and then it didn't recognize my iPad. So we'll make it work. So I just go right to the computer. So we're back to where we left off a few minutes ago. Okay, so getting to teams right now. I mentioned a little bit about complex adaptive systems earlier. I think many of you work with complex things in chemistry. And I don't have a background in chemistry, so it'd be great to hear from some of you on this. But complex adaptive systems, they're all around us. In fact, teams are complex adaptive systems. Humans are complex adaptive systems. But you can see some of the characteristics there. And, interdependence is one of them. Interactions, I understand that in chemistry, the interactions between the different agents matter more than the agents themselves. Guess what? That's the same thing in a team. It's not the quality of the individuals that matter. It's actually the quality of the interactions between them that make a high-performing team. And, of course, you have the law of unintended consequences, where you could put some chemicals together and not know what they do and then potentially create something bad down the road. So I know that you work in complex adaptive systems. I guess what? So do I. We need to start treating the way we work by leveraging lessons from ecology and natural science. So with your backgrounds, you can actually leverage a lot of what you know and apply them to human systems. It's not one for one, but we do not want to apply engineering approaches, mechanical approaches to human systems. And unfortunately, that's what we do a lot, is we like to move things to order and look for the simple thing to solve our problem. So a team, by definition, is a group of two or more people who work interdependently, adaptively, and dynamically towards a shared and valued goal. If you look at the characteristics below that of a complex adaptive system, where it's the definition of a team, which we get from team science or the science of teamwork, already knows this. So any questions or comments on the connection between chemistry, your backgrounds, and what we're trying to do with teams at the moment? Does this kind of make sense? Is there a connection there? And the awkward pauses are always fun, aren't they? All right. Moving on, I want to demonstrate to you just some basics of teamwork. This is actually called the degree of interdependence. This was done by Scott Tannenbaum, who is doing a lot of work for NASA right now, trying to figure out how we're going to get people to travel to Mars and work as high-performing teams. So this is a really advanced thing that they're working on, but this is really simple, the way they came up with the degree of interdependence. On the left side, really the sum of individual performance equals team performance. And on the right side is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So if you were to think about a sports team or type of sports, what type of sport would you put on the left side? And anybody can shout it out or put it in chat. And I'll just tell you right now, I can't see chat, so you're going to have to shout it out for me.
Golf, maybe.
Golf. Why is that?
Very much individual performance.
That's right. What else would you put on the left there?
Laura has said in the chat, cross country.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So
safety practices.
Safety, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I would go with that. We could talk about that later with my background in safety. So the type of sports I put on the left are, just as you said, the cross country, wrestling, golf, and get this, baseball is actually a low interdependent sport. It's more of an independent sport with a little bit of interdependence here and there. I'm not saying baseball is not a sport. I'm just saying it's not a team sport. So don't get upset if you're a baseball fan. All right. So what kind of sport would you put in the middle? You can just shout it out where it's not completely the whole is greater than the sum of parts, but anybody have an idea what kind of sport would go in the middle there?
We have in the chat basketball, relay, a couple of calls for basketball, cycling.
Okay. Cycling? Okay. I'm going to put American football in the middle. And the reason for this is you can shove, 20 minutes of action into 3 hours. That's one thing. Not as bad as baseball, but close enough. But you have centralized command at times. You do not have what is known as the dynamic reallocation of resources or people. If you're an offensive player, chances are you don't play defense. You stop play, and then you swap out with somebody else and bring somebody else in. You have very specific lanes to block in, but it's not completely on the left side of the degree of interdependence, but it's in the middle there. And on the right side, I'll just go ahead and share this. This is where we get into basketball, where you do have the dynamic reallocation of resources, and you get into rugby, which is a very interdependent sport. And by the way, the word or the concept of Scrum project management, or however you want to think about Scrum as a team sport, comes from rugby. So the types of teams that we can put on that, including musicians, a soloist, an orchestra, and of course a jazz ensemble or a jazz quartet, if you will. So when you think about the type of team you're on, when you're doing research, you're generally going to be on the right side there, and we'll get to that in a moment. You're going to have pooled groups on the left. So pooled teams are actually groups of people. Sequential, you can kind of see how that works there in the middle with the hierarchical command and control. And then on the right side, a reciprocal team. If you're doing some type of research where you have a lot of unknowns, chances are you're going to be further right, and you're going to need to work as a jazz team or as a rugby team. If you're doing something that's known, that you can apply the 10,000 hour rule to, you're going to be on the left side. So the way I understand your research, you're going to be more on the right side here in what we call innovation operations. So the ideation, design thinking, a little bit of the high reliability world, and what we call in software development, pair programming in the middle. So I'm going to pause there for a moment and just kind of check in. If I can stop, actually I can't stop sharing because I can't see my mouse, but that's another thing. It's always something. I'll just continue here and we'll end this in a moment and come back to the conversations. So Scrum, I want to touch about Scrum and Agile real fast, and then we'll have a conversation. So Scrum really builds on what is known as the Toyota production system. Scrum is a team framework. It's pretty basic, but it builds on Toyota production system and one other thing, which is known as fighter aviation. So that's why we have such a strong connection to Scrum, is because the guy that created Scrum was a former fighter pilot. So he took Toyota production system and lessons from what are known as John Boyd's OODA loop or fighter aviation, and he created Scrum. And Scrum came around in 1995. You can download the Scrum guide. It's free. It's Creative Commons. There's a new version that came out about a year or two ago. But it's very close to what is known as extreme programming, which is really about small teams and 2 or more people working together, and some blending that together with the Toyota production system and what he learned in fighter aviation. Now, you may be asking yourself, hey, what's the connection to Scrum and Agile? Well, Agile came around in 2001, and what it is just a series of a set of principles and values, 4 principles, 12 values. If you look at the number 1 principle up there, it's individuals and interactions over process and tools. If you just write that down, you're going to come back to team science in a heartbeat. So again, the big concept there is Agile is a set of principles and values. Agility is an outcome of the interactions of a team. So what we're looking for in a lot of what we do, we want agility, not so much Agile, because I can care less about your principles and values. I care about your interactions. And if you don't find great ways to work together as a team, at the end of the day, you're really just leaving change to chance. So I'm going to stop that there now that I can see my screen. That's the foundation of my presentation. I do have one other thing to share with you that's going to be a little bit more advanced. And I'm happy to stop here and kind of take a look and see if you have any questions about the fire hose of information I gave you about a little bit behind teamwork, a little bit behind complexity, and the connection to what you're doing in your world of research. So with that being said, any questions before I jump into something else?
So we did have a couple of questions as we went through, including one that was, what is Scrum, which you, I think, covered in general. If the person who wants to ask that as more detail that they would like, they can bring that up now.
Sure.
Actually,
okay, so
I believe that was you. So if that was answered sufficiently.
It was me that asked that just because I had sent in the meeting notice the word Scrum and Kanban and asked people if they want to know what that is to tune in. So
okay.
He actually explained Scrum, so that's perfect.
Okay. The other question that we did have was, why is Agile so popular, and who brought it first, which I think you've also just touched on, although not necessarily the popularity.
Yeah, absolutely. So the popularity of Agile is, it came out of 2001 out of Snowbird. 17 gentlemen went up there and they wrote the Agile Manifesto. You can download the Agile Manifesto anytime, any place. But the reason it's so popular is because a lot of folks are reducing it down to recipes. And managers love recipes, but that's not how it works. It actually changes the way we interact with one another. It removes the management approach to quote unquote leading to a leadership approach, which is more like leading like a gardener. You're creating the context for the team to grow or the vegetables to grow in. So some of the popular books right now, one of the popular books is a book called Doing Agile. I know that the author of that, he came through our training years ago. And all of a sudden he's an expert in this, and I'm scratching my head and I'm just saying, hey, you got it wrong. You got to focus on the science of teams, the ecology, take an ecological approach to building an organization that becomes high performing. If you use the mechanical approaches, you're not going to get this done. And you know this in your world, that you can't always apply a set of rules and standards to something if you're trying to do something new. So Agile is growing in popularity right now because the growth of these heavy-duty frameworks. They promise that they're going to change the way you work. They don't work. I know this. I worked with the guys that created them. They'll tell you they don't work, but they're easy to sell. But what does work is working, focusing on the teaming skills, working on that, and then using the frameworks, a framework like Scrum, in the right context. And that context is based off the type of work you're doing. Is it highly interdependent work, or is it low independent work or independent work? So context determines the method. And Carrie brought up something else named Kanban. And I can demonstrate Kanban to you, or I can just explain it to you. Kanban is just a card system that was, I came out of the Toyota production system in the 50s. I think it was in the 50s. And it's just basically three things. It's to do, doing, and done. The purpose of Kanban is to eliminate itself. And we use Kanban inside of Scrum. People call it a Scrum board, but you just write down those things that you need to do. You move them into the to-do column, and then you move them to the done column when you're done with them. And we do it as a snowplow approach. You don't try to do everything at once. And I could do it on the backboard here, but maybe you can see I have a little bit of Kanban going on back down there below me. This is you can use this in option trading. I do that all the time. I actually taught my father-in-law how to do option trading using the same techniques that I would teach a team on how to do Kanban or Scrum. It's the same thing. Trading options are a complex adaptive system. So Scrum works really well in there. but you're finding the popularity of Agile everywhere, including the DoD. I know that's a lot, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. It was me and I answered. Thank you so much. I have one more question. I see a lot of training out there for Agile and Scrum. Do you think those are valuables to have it, especially if you're looking for a job? Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Great question. Yes, they are. Getting a certified Scrum Master certification, a CSM, certified Scrum Master, is good. You can get that online too through what is known as a PST, Professional Scrum Training. There's different types of ways you can get that. But to be honest with you, where I'm coaching at Chevron now, I will take a person that worked on a rig that understands teamwork over a Scrum Master any day, because I can train them up on what really matters. I don't know how what the job market looks like right now for Agile coaches and Scrum Masters. I imagine it's kind of bleak, but it is a good place to be. The training is pretty much what you can learn out of the Scrum Guide, the 19-page Scrum Guide, or picking up a book, but having a certification is not a bad thing. So my answer to your question is it's worth it. But remember, there might be a lot of people looking at the same thing. I do want to share one more thing with you. I'm going to put up a background here. And this is, we talked a lot about complexity, some basics here. This is known as the Cynefin framework. Cynefin is the place of multiple belongings or habitat. It's a Welsh word. I work with the creator of this, Dave Snowden. It's built out of DARPA. So the same place that gave us the internet gave us this. What it really is about is you have the 5 domains that you find pretty much in nature. You have an ordered system over here and your unordered system over here. Clear is really about your known knowns. This is where a checklist would work really well. The complicated domain is your domain of subject matter experts, like those radiologists, but realize that they'll have known unknowns at some point. And of course, the complex domain where there's no connection between cause and effect, at least not until you do it in retrospect. So the best place to use Scrum is going to be over here in this green area, where you move from exploration to exploitation, or innovation to operational excellence, or you can think about the complex domain as a fail-safe environment where you probe, you sense, you respond, and once you find some repeatability, that brings you back to a fail-safe environment. Let me make sure I said that correctly. Safe to fail, fail-safe would be the way you look at this. I'd highly recommend, as with your backgrounds, with a little bit of complex adaptive systems in the work that you've done, take a look at the Cynefin framework. It's Cynefin, and just you can search it on the internet. But this is a great way to understand the context. It's a sense-making framework. It helps us build up on that. And once you understand this, we start to understand where to apply the different methods. So with that being said, I'm going to leave it there. I threw a lot at you today, and unfortunately, I'm a fast speaker, fast talker. Hopefully, you're getting some value out of this, and really, we're going to get the best dialogue between the questions you have. So I'm going to go ahead and stop. Actually, I can stay on the screen for now. I'll leave it there. Just throw it back to you, Don, and everybody on here to see if there are any questions that I could answer in the time we have remaining.
Thank you very much. I did actually have a question with regards to the framework that you just presented here. Mm-hmm. So when going from a complex to a complicated sort of setup there, how does that play out in kind of the real world, and how you manage, how teams are managed and how they interact together?
Okay, so over here in the complex domain, we do not have repeatability. We're probing. So if I'm say this right, in chemistry, you're going to find things that interact differently and maybe not repeat itself. And so the team here is going to be your rugby team. You're going to play a game of rugby or a game of basketball. You're going to shift roles because different people are going to see things differently at different times. And then as we come back over here, you're going to turn more into a game of football, right? You have a connection between the cause and effect. You know what they are. You're going to use good practices here. Down here, you're going to use best practices. Up here, you're going to use what we call some adaptive practices. So as teams go from exploring a new capability, exploring a new way to find oil, if you will, they're going to be moving from over here. Once they figure out how that works, they're going to go over here and they're going to exploit that capability. So for those of you who have a software background, you can think about DevOps as being the innovation side over here, innovation operations, and making that delivery to your customer in your operations side. So, and Don, I don't know if that's going to answer that question completely, because there's a lot we can dive into as far as the transition from complex to complicated. And by the way, that'd be about another 5-hour discussion on how that works in the framework.
Understood. So Carrie has asked that teams are composed of multiple personalities. So how do you best utilize the talent on your team?
Okay, so one of the things that we have on a team are multiple perspectives, our genetic heritage, or cultural background. There's so many things that are built in within each individual, right? So multiple personalities, that's fine. We don't want to change anybody's personality, but we can use tools and techniques to make sure people are heard. And if you go back to the toothbrush example, where some people saw the toothbrush, the purple one, and others didn't, when you have multiple personalities, if you will, on that team, people are going to see things differently. So how do you make sure that the weak signals are heard on your team? And how do you make sure every individual is contributing, or those who want to contribute can? We have some tools and techniques that we can share with you, and I can demonstrate one with you right now that allow all team members to be heard. And if you think about how you put information inside of the chat today, if you're looking at somebody putting in the color purple when they saw the toothbrush, and you saw a green and white one, I imagine you kind of doubted yourself. So you get some anchoring in there. What we can do with the chat feature in this virtual space is we can use a red teaming technique called think, write, share, or think, chat, send. And that's think about the question, write down your answer, put it in chat, and then send it off. And the thing about sending that off to somebody is you want to send it to not a group, but you want to send it to somebody, maybe a facilitator or one person on the team who sees all that information. And the reason behind that is we don't want anchoring, we don't want the biases in there, but there are ways to do this. There are other ways to maximize the value from multiple perspectives through effective teamwork, which we didn't really cover today. How do you plan as a team? How do you communicate with one another? All those need to be explored in some type of training. So the answer to your question is multiple personalities are fantastic. Cognitive diversity is great, but you need to find ways to work together as a team, which we call teaming. And that can be trained, learned, practiced, and reinforced. Good, great question.
Does anyone else have any questions to ask? So what I'm taking from your the discussion with regards to team diversities is that there needs to be a mechanism in place for people to actually share those opinions in a way that they're not getting shouted down or getting silenced effectively.
Right, exactly. So when I demonstrated this the other day for Carrie, and she brought up the example, the moment I told her, no, you didn't see it like that, she started to doubt herself. And the problem with that is once we start attacking a person's idea, they're not going to contribute anymore, right? So we'll get it, when we get into psychological safety, how to do that or create that environment as a leader. There's a lot more behind the team science that we didn't touch on. We're really high level today. But to answer your question, going back to the third leading cause of death in the United States, people aren't seeing the purple toothbrush. They're not sharing that information. And that's what we want to try to do is create the environment and the tools and techniques where they can see that purple toothbrush, because at the end of the day, they're going to kill somebody or hurt somebody. In your world, chances are you're not going to kill anybody, but you can kill your company, you can kill a project, you can damage something because you're not listening to those that are seeing things differently.
Well, I think that comes in with one of the comments that was made earlier, which is you can potentially kill somebody given the safety issues inherent with chemical energy and things that people are working with. So it definitely applies from that perspective as well.
Absolutely. So, we talked about Macondo. My background in our lives are on the line all the time, right? So we could actually kill each other on accident, and that's why we learned how to work together as a team. The research on that came out of the 70s when we put a black box in aircraft, and we started to discover that the reasons planes crash was not because of mechanical issues, it's because human issues. And we all have the same, we're all human, we all make mistakes, we all have strengths and weaknesses. We need to find a way to work together, and that's what teaming's all about.
So Carrie has asked if you can discuss the ADO tool. ADO?
Oh, ADO, yeah. So there are different agile lifecycle management tools that exist in the world. There's Jira, there's Azure DevOps, ADO from Microsoft, which is built off of TFS. There's version 1, you name it, there's a bunch out there. What they are is they're basic Kanban, where you can go on and start putting your stories up there. Generally in an agile approach, or Scrum or XP, we write stories from the customer's perspective. And if you look back at the flow system, that's the most important thing, is the flow of value to the customer. So always look from their perspective as to what they want, and that's going to reduce the work that you actually do. But we use the ADO system, Jira, all those other things, to work together as a team, if you will. We put it in a system, we can see it. In my opinion, people get too fixated on the tool. It's really just basic Kanban. If you were to put a Kanban board up on your wall, if you could all be in the same room, just use sticky notes. But we try to simulate that through Azure DevOps. And then there's other capabilities in there. We can connect many teams to it. There's remote teaming capability within that, but it is, for the most part, it's not a bad thing, but it's better to learn the high touch, low tech tools first, rather than the high tech, low touch tools.
It's fair. I have another question from Anchor. Says communication is the key factor in teamwork. So how is that done differently with Agile?
Well, it's not. So let me be clear. So Agile does not teach you these things. It gives you a framework and assumes that you know how to work together as a team. Let me say that again. Scrum assumes you already know how to work together as a team. That's my frustration with it, is throwing a framework on you doesn't make you a team. You got to work on the interactions. So I'll give you an example on great communication and how to do this. Just the other night, I was flying drones with the Navy. I saw a cargo container ship that was coming between us and where our drone was at 150 feet off the ground at a good slant range. So I said to the person who was controlling it, I said, "Hey, Willie, there's a cargo ship coming. I think it's going to affect our line of sight between us and the drone. I recommend climbing to 400 feet so we don't lose our contact. What do you think?" And what I did there is I said his name, got his attention, gave him the context of what I'm seeing, gave him a solution, and threw it back to him and said, "What do you think? What should we do about it?" And that's called effective communication. The other thing we can do is you can learn how to communicate as a team by what we call closed-loop communication, which is if I have a pencil in my hand and I hand a pencil off to somebody, I'll say something like, "Nigel, this is your pencil. It's my pencil, your pencil." We get confirmation 3 ways. For those of you who remember what it's like to go into Starbucks, when we used to go to Starbucks, they would actually use this. In fact, as a customer, you walk in there, and I don't drink a lot of Starbucks, but I would say, "I want a coffee with whatever. And they would repeat back to me the way they want me to say that in the future, which was a grande macchiato, blah, 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 whatever it may be. But they would also say that 3 times. And they would say it to the customer, they would say it to the barista, and they would say it back. So what that does, it reduces variance within a system, a human system. And when we get the opportunity to get out and go back to Starbucks, maybe you'll see this, but they practice closed-loop communication to reduce the variance because their coffee is it gets expensive to them if they make the wrong drink. So, but as humans in our organizations, we don't practice these things. They're really basic things that we learn as children, but we forget to to apply them. And worse, when you're typing, you have Microsoft Outlook open and you fire off a message, remember, that's only about 10% of the message, right? We're missing body language, we're missing context, voice, we're missing a lot of stuff. And just because you hit send doesn't mean the other person understands that what you sent to them. So there's a lot, Ankur, that we can talk about for effective communication. Agile does not teach this. It assumes you already know how to do that. And that's my frustration with it.
So this actually, he's responded, and this actually touches on a question that I had as well, and that the practice works in person when you're in-person communication, but how does that work for distance communication or things like remote teams?
It's the same thing. So if you got somebody's attention throughout the context, gave them the solution and threw it back to them, that you can do that in email too. Bottom line up front, what are you asking me to do? I need you to do this. I need to look at this. Imagine this, because we do have the capability to be live on camera, you can see body language, you can see me move my hands and all that. There's still good ways to do this here, but when you put a mask on and we're back in person, we're going to lose some of the body language there. So when you type something, you're only sending about, I think it's 7% of the message. And when you talk on the phone, it's about 50%. When you see me like this, you're getting about 80% of the message. So effective communication, there are tools and techniques that you can borrow. There's one that we use in healthcare. I can't remember the STOP, but different acronyms on just basic things. State the situation, throw out a way to fix it, and then get some feedback from the person. So yeah, the answer is you can do effective communication remotely.
It does require practice and effort on the part of communicating.
Right. There's something I did yesterday I didn't do for you today. It looked at the cognitive system 1, system 2 thinking in our brains. What we want we're pattern matching beings. So once you give somebody an effective, good practice, they're going to do that all the time. So this is like changing habits, and we want to do the same thing for teams. But a team needs to have a very similar approach to how they work together. If they don't, you'll never be a team. So there's a lot to scaling agility that folks are not doing, and in my opinion, it's based off of how we interact as teams.
All right.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much. Brian, this has been wonderful, and I really appreciate the time that you've put into preparing for this and speaking with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. And hopefully you got some value out of it. Take a look at the flow system, flow guide online. Feel free to hit me up with any questions. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Ask a lot of questions. Don't assume that your Agile coaches know everything, because I guarantee you they don't.
What it sounds like.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks again, and thanks to everyone for coming. I do have a couple final reminders before we shut off.